The drawing enters a middle stage at some point where most things in regards to line are up on the table. This means we've added almost all the lines and angle breaks that we're going to need in this linear blocking stage, and now we have to play around with them until we can improve them, or we can't improve them anymore. Moving on from here, we're going to be adding value, and the addition of value is going to increase the complexity of this piece and the process tenfold. It's best if most of what can be done in regards to line has been done when there is only line there. One thing which is easy to lose track of when drawing is keeping the drawing's logic consistent. This is difficult because we can't draw everywhere at once, of course, so if we change one small thing, then something else has to change as well. Any movement in the center line, for example, is going to cause us to change something with the features. By moving one eye socket up or down, the other eye socket will need to change with it in order for our piece to continue to stay consistent and logical within itself. This is a great challenge to overcome and something that we need to constantly consider if we are making a drawing that has the integrity, or we would like to have the integrity present in the subject that we're drawing. Every time something is altered on one side, we have to make sure that the cascading effects of our change is considered and taken care of. The easiest place for this to slip is going to be the logic of the features relationship to the center line. Notice here how all our horizontal lines line up and therefore follow along with the same story. This story that I'm referring to is the position of the skull that we're drawing, of course. Often you'll hear people say that these lines should be converging lines, the horizontal lines, since they're all aiming towards the vanishing point on the horizon. And while this is true, in most practical cases you'll find that the depth of the head is so small that these converging lines of the feature might as well not be converging at all. This effect can be exaggerated by certain lenses and proximity to the subject that you're drawing, but in general you'll find that dealing with these horizontal lines as being parallel to each other, which is sort of what I'm doing here, is going to do the trick and keep things somewhat simpler for yourself while working. They do converge, but it is so far outside your paper that for you they might as well not be converging at all. We're only dealing with line here at the moment. Eventually we're going to be dealing with light and shadow, as this is the beginning of what could be turned into a very realistic full value drawing. Even though we're dealing with a line drawing here for now, which is an abstraction of reality, we're going to include certain lines that are not there in real life, but they're useful to us. They don't have anything to do with light and shadow and would eventually disappear, but for now they tell us something about the 3D form that we can find useful. One such line is the temporal line, which separates the front and the top plane of the head from the side plane of the head. This is an anatomical feature which is useful to place already, as it sets the side plane apart from the front plane of the head, which helps tremendously visually for us. This line here marks where the side plane and the front plane of the cheekbones meet. Of course, this is a gradual transition from one to the other, but this little line communicates to us that such a change takes place and helps us visually understand that the cheekbone's position and movement in space changes from one orientation to another. As the drawing becomes more complex, the center line has to follow along and become more complex. The topography of the surface of the skull, which our center line travels across, needs to be included in the center line itself. In the beginning, this is information perhaps best left untouched, but as the work progresses, we need this to occur. The center line becomes a line like all the other lines that we just discussed that helps us describe the three-dimensional form of the skull that we're working on. Drawing, of course, happens on a flat paper surface, so anything we can do to help take the drawing out of two-dimensional space and into 3D space, even though it's just an illusion of 3D space, is something we should try our best to take advantage of and do. Obviously, a skull is all anatomical landmarks. Well, perhaps not, but it's all anatomical anyway. But there are some anatomical landmarks that I look for more intently than others. For example, the teeth here I'm not really that interested in. They'll play a role only if the goal is to create a highly rendered finished drawing, but here the goal is somewhat different and more basic and simple, and therefore other things become more important. Let's go from the top of the skull and traverse our way down, finding some important anatomical landmarks that you also need to find on your own skull drawing. The external orbital apophysis, I hope I have that name right, I might be mispronouncing it here, is this little angle break that we find at the top of the eye socket, sort of the upper corner of the eye socket, if you will. This angle break indicates where we go from front plane to side plane, and also where we go from horizontal to vertical within the eye socket itself. It's important because we need to make sure both are symmetrically located across the center line. In this drawing, we see evidence of one on the right-hand side as contour. The other is internal, but needs to be logically placed. This, of course, means perpendicular to the center line, but also further away from the center line compared to the one on the right. If we look at everything on the right side of the center line, we can see that it appears much closer to the center line than what is on the left. This is because what's further away from us shrinks in distance compared to what's closer to us, of course. Below that, we have another important one, that is the bottom edge of the zygomatic bone, or zygomat bone, or cheekbone, if you will. This corner or angle where we're going from front to side. As you can see again, we see evidence of this on the right-hand side of our reference in the contour. Because this is where the zygomatic bone turns from the front to the side, it does disappear from view on the right-hand side. Of course, we're viewing the skull from the three-quarter view, and this means that the entirety of the zygomatic bone or cheekbone is visible on the left-hand side, and we need to locate this point on the left-hand side since we can see it on the right-hand side. Since it's the same feature and the skull is symmetrical, we're going to find it by traveling perpendicular to the center line across the face from one side to the other, of course. And we can use the same measurements described above to locate this anatomical feature as well. While not always useful or perhaps as obvious or important as the two described above, you'll often find this little angle break in the body of the mandible bone or jawbone. You can see that we can see this angle break on both sides of the mandible bone here, and therefore it's important to make sure, like with all the other features visible on both sides of our skull, that we locate them horizontally across from each other, perpendicular to the center line. There are not one road that leads to Rome here, of course. There are many ways to draw something. I've chosen to show you the way that we teach drawing here at the Academy, with the exception of the side-size system, of course. We're using comparative measurement, not side size. A linear block-in, for example, is not always necessary, but it can be really useful when it comes to learning how to draw or how to understand what it is that you're drawing. In this case, a skull. Line is of course flexible and can therefore be changed easily as many times as we need to, if we draw with a light hand. Other ways of drawing in other materials do exist, of course. And other approaches are exactly that, simply other approaches. And there's not one approach that reigns supreme over them all. This is, however, how I learned to draw, with some slight modifications perhaps, but drawing like this, with line first and then adding value later, is going to be very useful to us as sculptors as well. Line really helps us understand our subject. Of course, as sculptors, we very often want to explore form as well, but that is a much longer and slower conversation and something that takes much longer in terms of time spent drawing. And I think in the beginning, it is more important to get repetition in, rather than spending, say, 10, 20 hours on one drawing. As a starting point when it comes to drawing, it's important to try and keep things as simple as possible for oneself and practice one method, one way of measuring, one approach, for a little bit at least, before attempting to branch out. Linear block-in leading into shadow and thus leading into value, which you'll see in the next part in this series, is going to be a very good jumping off point from which you can explore more exciting and perhaps more interesting approaches. Thank you for watching until the end of the video. I hope you learned a thing or two that you can take with you into your own practice. Please let me know what you thought about the video in the comments below. And until next time, stay creative.